Good morning, fifth graders. So today we are reading chapter 3 in Beyond the Horizon. You'll notice that it says lesson 5 at the top, and somewhere over here it should say week of 518, day 3. You'll also notice it says we're zooming in on pages 40 to 47 from Beyond the Horizon. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So chapter 3, and remember we're zooming in on pages 40 to 47. Let's skip so many pages. Oh, too far. 50. Went a little bit too far here. Okay, so chapter 3. The eyes that stared down at Sara were dark and curious. The girl had a purple headscarf, faded and worn, covering long black hair. In her nose was a tiny hoop of silver. She smiled to see that Sara was awake. Sara was lying in a small room with mud walls. Light streamed in through an open doorway, and outside in the courtyard, a water buffalo worked on some feed, its jaws grinding. Sara recalled the market and the oncoming cart. But what of the trade's increase? How long had she been lying there? Panic rose up through her chest again. Sara felt her head where it ached and tried to sit up. Nahi, the girl wagged her finger and gently pushed Sara back down. She spoke to Sara now, her voice dancing over an unfamiliar tongue, comforting, reassuring. Dady, the girl called out, and an old woman shuffled in from the courtyard outside. In her hands were a bowl and a cup. The woman bent down and carefully lifted Sara's head and put the cup to her lips. Pani, she explained. There she is. There's Sara. Sara took a long drink of water and lay back down. She felt so tired, so weak. The old woman ran her hand down Sara's cheek with a soft smile, and Sara thought back to how her father had done the same thing just before he'd left. She'd been so horrible to him. She wished he were there with her at that moment. She would react differently this time. The old woman scooped what looked like brown mud from her bowl and smoothed it down on the lump on Sara's head. The smell was overpowering, stronger than the spices in the market, but it felt cool and soothing, and Sara's eyes began to close. Father, she muttered. What the blazes do you mean, lost? Captain Booth looked up from the map that lay on the cabin table that he and Lieutenant Armitage had been studying. Cook stared at his boots, cap in hand, the first mate by his side. Yesterday, when I went to the butcher's to get some meat, I turned around and Sam was gone. Just vanished, Captain, Cook explained. I thought he'd have come back by now. Captain Booth slammed a fist to the table. I'll not see one of my crew forsaken. Send out some men. You can go with them, Cook, and bring him back. Yes, Captain, said the mate, leaving the cabin. Foolish boy, said Captain Booth. We can't afford to let these tidings hold us up, unfortunate as they may be, said Armitage. I just hope he's found quickly, muttered Captain Booth. Armitage turned back to the map. This stretch of channel just south of the town looks favorable to the trading post, a good approach from the sea and close to the trade routes from the north. Is the land occupied? Captain Booth inquired. Armitage peered at the map and shrugged. A village or two, perchance. It matters not. Peasants can be persuaded to leave. Captain Booth nodded. Have your ship ready to sail. We weigh anchor tomorrow, whether Cook's boy has returned or not. Think about what they were just talking about and how you would feel if you were one of those people that lived in those small villages. Whoops. The next day when she woke up, It soon became clear to Sara that her hope of making the trades increase before it set sail were slim and getting slimmer. Anguish washed over her in waves. Her head hurt too much to move. Each time she tried to walk, blinding pains shot through her skull, forcing her to lie down. She could only manage a few steps at a time with her rescuer, whose name she learned was Priya, under one arm. There was a small matter of trying to figure out where she was. Priya helped Sara outside and laid her down in the shade of a tree, making her comfortable. Then, while Dadi kneaded dough, Priya tended to a small fire. In the heat shimmering off the land, Sara could just see the river. It was not too far from where she lay. Across green farmlands in one direction, she thought she could detect the silhouette of a town. Was it the same place where the trade's increase was docked? Priya's home was no more than 2 rooms, 2 mud huts in a small village of similar huts. The huts had all curved, thatched roofs, and inside the walls of each were smooth and straight. Stuck to the outside were dark cakes made of animal dung, perfectly flat and mixed with straw, and each one with a handprint of the person who made it. Sara watched as Priya fed some dung cakes to the fire as fuel. "How did I get here?" Sara asked finally, but Priya just smiled back. "Me, here," Sara tried again as she pointed to herself and to the ground. Priya thought for a moment, sweeping her hair behind her shoulders. Then she squatted beside Sara, and drew shapes in the dust. She drew a cart hitting a person and pointed at Sara. Then she mimed carrying a weight and pointed at the water buffalo tethered to the hut. "So you put me on your water buffalo and brought me here?" asked Sara. Priya beamed. "Jiha." "Thank you," said Sara, as she reached out and squeezed Priya's hand. Priya blushed. "What about my ship, the trade's increase?" Sara reached for a twig, and in the dirt she sketched a ship with many sails. Priya looked apologetic. She hadn't understood. She called her grandmother over to look. They chatted briefly, but neither seemed to know what Sara was trying to say. Dadi gave Sara a dish with what looked like cooked spinach and a flat piece of bread. She raised her fingers to her lips. "Connie," she said, "food." Sara suddenly realized how hungry she was. Sara lay under the tree for much of the day, slipping in and out of sleep. Through half-opened eyes, she watched as Priya swept the hard dirt outside her home with a broom made from twigs, and tidied the rooms inside. Then she watched as Priya milked the glossy-skinned buffalo, tiny darts of milk slowly filling up her earthenware bowl. Dadi sat next to Sara, sifting rice in a flat basket, picking out the bad husks and throwing them to the chickens that clucked and fussed around them. Even though her heart was uneasy, Sara couldn't help but think how peaceful things were here, how different from the life she had left behind on the ship. The huts made of warm earth, the dark-skinned girl with her headscarf and nose ring, and the lilting tongue as she spoke. These poor farmers had little, thought Sara. They had no more than 2 rooms and a few animals. But they hadn't thought twice about rescuing a stranger from harm and taking care of her. They had saved her life. There was no doubt about it. Dadi had graced her with a remedy and kindness, and yet Sara's father and the others thought them barbarous. How wrong they were. By the afternoon, Sara felt strong enough to get to her feet and help Priya collect water from the river. At the riverbank, she watched as the other women went in to bathe, keeping themselves covered with their clothes. Sara found a sheltered spot among some reeds and stripped down to her undershirt. It felt good to get clean. When she came out, she noticed her clothes on the bank were gone, and in their place was a purple dress with a matching scarf, all made of simple cotton. A girl's dress, one of Priya's. So they weren't fooled by her boy's disguise after all. Sara quickly changed. These were much better than Henry's ill-fitting clothes, which were caked in dirt. Now that she had a dress, she was glad she allowed her hair to grow a little bit longer on the journey. When Priya and the other women saw Sara, they broke out into giggles. "Tum Sundar Ho," said Priya, her eyes bright. She was telling Sara she looked beautiful. At sunset, Priya's father returned home, the baskets on the back of his cart empty. Sara wondered if he'd been selling his vegetables in the city. Priya's father unharnessed his water buffalo and tethered it beside the other. Then he unraveled the cloth wrapped around his head while Priya brought him a bowl of water to wash in. Dadi busied herself making his dinner. Priya's father nodded at Sara and seemed pleased to see her dressed in one of his daughter's saris. For the first time, Sara realized she hadn't seen Priya's mother. Had she passed away, as Sara's had? Priya and her father talked while he rinsed his face, neck, and hands, and prepared himself to eat. Priya tried to find Sara's drawing of a ship in the dirt to show her father. Sara quickly drew another one, and then she drew the coat of arms, 2 ships on a shield. She pointed at herself and then the drawings. Priya's father nodded. He understood. He put down his chapati and slowly mimed the rolling of waves, the winding path of a ship. In any language, the meaning was clear. The ship had sailed. Sara turned her head away and began to cry. There's the drawing of the ship. And that's all for today. We'll see you again tomorrow.